Hey y'all, what's good? And welcome to my channel. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you to all of my subscribers. I appreciate you guys so much. Let's remember to have healthy dialogue, be respectful to ourselves and to each other, and to challenge the argument and not the person. Let's get it. Anthony Edward Sowell, born August 19th, 1959, is an American serial killer identified in press reports as the Cleveland Strangler. He was arrested in October 2009 as a suspect in the murders of 11 women whose bodies were discovered at his Cleveland, Ohio duplex in the Mount Pleasant neighborhood. Sowell was charged with 85 counts of murder, rape, kidnapping. He pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity, but later changed his plea to simply not guilty. On July 22nd, 2011, he was convicted on all but two counts against him, including the murders of the 11 women whose bodies were found in the house in 2009. On August 10th, jurors recommended the death penalty for Sowell. On August 12th, Judge Ambrose upheld the jury's recommendation. The house at 1878 Page Avenue in East Cleveland stood out in the 1960s. It was lime green. It stands out now because it was the childhood home of serial killing defendant Anthony Sowell. Neighbors remember that the roomy two-story house between Euclid Avenue and Forest Hill Park had a nice backyard, and back then it was overwhelmingly white, mostly working class neighborhood, just beginning its slow slide into poverty. This was a gorgeous house, said Katie L. Tabb, who raised her children just down the street. Inside those walls, Anthony lived out most of his childhood with his half sister and seven cousins. The cousins moved into the home after their mother died. We were always really unsure what the family layout was, said Chip Fleshman, who grew up on Page. Anthony's mother, Claudia Benson Garrison, and his maternal grandmother, Irene Justice, headed the household. Justice is deceased, and Claudia Garrison could not be located to comment for the story. His father, Thomas Sowell, was absent. I never saw a father. No, recalled Tab. In fact, said Ramona Davis, 49, one of Anthony's living cousins, the absent Mr. Sowell was not even talked about. For some reason, Anthony and his father didn't get along. Sowell not only lacked a father figure in his childhood, but he also witnessed abuse, two of Sowell's cousins said in separate interviews. Ramona Davis and her twin sister, Leona, say an adult would force them to strip butt naked, tie them up, and beat them. Electrical extension cords often were used to bind and whip them, the cousin said. It was psycho, Ramona Davis said. Anthony was not beaten, both twins said, but he watched the beatings. And Leona said he also connived to create trouble for his cousins. Anthony would secretly drink his grandmother's Pepsi or start a fight, then blame Leona, who got punished, she said. If Anthony's childhood was as dysfunctional as his cousins described, Tab didn't see it reflected in his behavior. He was the kindest child you wanted to deal with, Tab said. He was always very respectful. Anthony was shy and skinny, said Kavana Faith Walker, an artist and staff member at the Cleveland Museum of Art. Faith Walker met him in the early 1970s when Anthony attended Kirk Junior High. He was a little quiet and never wanted to start a conversation, Faith Walker wrote in an email. If you say hi, he would say hi. If you asked a question, he would answer it. He was friendly, sort of, in that he would smile whenever I looked in his direction. Anthony's family, while not rich, was not poor, Fleshman said. But when he got to be high school age, he couldn't afford a car. He was a walker, Fleshman said. To have a car as a high school kid was a big deal. Anthony, the teenager, was no ladies' man either, Fleshman said. I never knew him to have a girlfriend. Acquaintances subjected Tony to a constant ritual of teasing, especially about an assumed lack of sexual experience, Faith Walker said. Occasionally, he got angry. I remember one time on the basketball courts, a group of people teasing him about girls, being a virgin, and things in general, Faith Walker said, recalling an incident later in the 1970s at Forest Hill Park. He tried to talk the bitches and hoes kind of talk, but it really wasn't part of him. A cat threw the ball to him. Anthony was so mad. He caught the ball in his stomach. He took the ball and whipped it at the guy. The guy could eat Anthony for breakfast and would have, except another guy stepped in. But one of his cousins said Anthony was no virgin. Sowell, according to Leona, regularly took her upstairs to a bedroom in the Page Avenue house and forced her to have sex with him when they were preteens. It was happening almost every day, Leona said. Ramona said she never witnessed her sister being raped, but she said she believed Leona. Leona Davis says she tried to report the grapes to authorities, but no one believed her. Maybe they should have, Leona Davis said. I think the Imperial Avenue killings wouldn't have ever happened if somebody would have listened to me. If you were 18 in the late 1970s, you wanted out of the deteriorating East Cleveland and you wanted out fast. You could always join the Marines, which is what Anthony Sowell did, reporting for boot camp on January 24th, 1978, at Paris Island, South Carolina. He had at least three good reasons for getting out of town. He was a bashful kid who might have found the proud slogan a tempting boost. He didn't have enough credits to graduate high school, he said in a 2005 psychological evaluation. Sowell also said he attended Shaw High School, but East Cleveland officials said they have no record he did. And he had just made a Shaw High School student pregnant. His daughter, by that union, was born 8.5 months after Sowell joined the Marines. Neither woman would respond to questions about Sowell. An unidentified woman who was with Sowell's daughter when the two plain dealer reporters approached said, "You should talk to the Marines." The Marine Corps was not the Marine Corps would not release much about Sowell beyond the standard name, rank, and serial number. Even Sowell's lawyers acknowledged 3 weeks ago that they knew nothing about his military career. One thing is clear: the Marines taught Sowell how to subdue and kill using his hands and how to wield objects as improvised weapons. After boot camp, Sowell reported to the North Carolina camp on April 24th, 1978, for the then standard 22-day basic combat training course. That included hand-to-hand and close quarters combat to develop what the Corps now calls the warrior ethos. The syllabus included basic chokes and basic weapons of opportunity. Sowell spent another month at the camp learning electrical wiring. He was then assigned to the Marine Corps Air Station Cherry Point in Havelock, North Carolina, as an electrician. Sowell spent almost 5 of his 7 years in the Marine Corps at Cherry Point and lived for at least part of that time in a trailer, blue with a white stripe, situated with 7 other trailers in a secluded area. 5 months after returning to Cherry Point from a year-long stint in the Pacific, Sowell got married in September 1981 to a fellow Marine. It was a civil ceremony performed by a magistrate in a historic courthouse in New Bern, North Carolina. He was 22. The woman died in 1998 while Sowell was serving time in an Ohio penitentiary. Her mother said her daughter told her Sowell was drinking to excess. She married him to help him. She didn't want him to get a honorable discharge. Excuse me, Norma Lawson said from her home in California. She was trying to get him through the Marine Corps. She divorced him the day she got out in 1985. After a year at Camp Butler in Japan, Sowell left the Marines too on January 15th, 1985, at Camp Pendleton, California. Although the Marine Corps said he went AWOL for 2 months at one point, Sergeant Sowell departed with a footlocker full of praise, including a Rifle Sharpshooter Award, Good Conduct Medal, a certificate of commendation, and two letters of appreciation. He returned home to Page Avenue, where court records show he resumed an old habit, drinking too much. And within the next few years, he would start working up a long arrest sheet. The East Cleveland Sowell returned to after leaving the Marines in January 1985 was completely changed. So was Sowell, who got very busy, getting very drunk, and very angry, according to his own admission and his police record. The East Cleveland population was now 90% Black. A quarter of East Clevelanders lived below the poverty level. City finances were a shamble. And much of the Cleveland area was inundated by crack, a new, smokable, potent form of cocaine that swept the country's urban areas in 1985. Crime rates rose, and a new subset of female addicts, women so desperate to get high that they would sell or barter their bodies to get a few rocks of crack, hit the streets. He was divorced after 4 years from a wife, worried about his boozing, and court documents indicate he was being accused of ducking his responsibilities as the father of a 7-year-old. Sowell hit the bottle hard. He had at least 6 drinks nearly every day during this period of his life, he told psychological evaluators in 2005. He would sometimes start first thing in the morning and would occasionally black out, said. He acknowledged having family problems and increased aggressiveness when drinking, the evaluation said. That aggression surfaced in 1988 when police arrested Sowell on a charge of domestic violence and he served 8 days in jail, East Cleveland police said. The evaluation doesn't mention illegal drugs, but his arrest record lists a 1988 charge of possessing dangerous drugs, though it does not specify what drug. Other arrests from 1986 to 1989 included charges of disorderly conduct, DUI, and public drunkenness. The reports are incomplete, making it impossible to determine the outcome of those cases. Meanwhile, terror stalked East Cleveland. The bodies of 3 women, 2 of them suspected drug users, turned up near Sowell's Page Avenue home. In May 1988, the body of 36-year-old Rosalind Garner was found in her home on Hayden Avenue. She had been strangled. Carmela Karen Prater, 27, a resident of Page Avenue and a suspected drug dealer, was found in an abandoned home on First Avenue, just off Hayden, on February 27, 1989. The cause of death is unknown. A month later, on March 28th, the body of another suspected drug user, Mary Thomas, 27, was found near an abandoned building, again on First Avenue. The red ribbon used to strangle Thomas was still around her neck. None of these cases are solved. East Cleveland police reopened the cases after Sowell's arrest in the Imperial Avenue strangler case. No link has been made. Police did link Sowell to the attempted rape of a 21-year-old woman who was 3 months pregnant. She told her story to authorities 4 months after Thomas's body was discovered. On July 22nd, 1989, Sowell met with a woman at a motel at Euclid Avenue and Lee Road, the woman told police. The woman, who has a criminal record of drug abuse, feared police who had arrived at the motel might arrest her. Sowell told her that her boyfriend was waiting for her at Sowell's house, which was about 500 yards away, the police report says. The boyfriend wasn't at Sowell's house, the woman told police, but a bed was. He threw her on it and choked and raped her over and over, according to a police report. When she tried to leave, Sowell bound her hands with a necktie, cinched a belt around her feet, and stuffed a rag in her mouth, the woman said. Then Sowell, who had been drinking, fell asleep. She wiggled free and escaped out of a window. A grand jury indicted Sowell in the July 22nd case. He did not show for his court date, and on December 8th, the court issued an arrest warrant, but Sowell was nowhere to be found. 7 months later, and 4 miles away, another woman said Sowell raped her too. At 1 a.m., Sunday, June 24th, 1990, the 31-year-old woman told police she went to his house on East 71st Street in Cleveland. She sat beside Sowell on a love seat and started drinking. Sowell got up, the police report says, came up behind her and started choking her, spewing a stream of obscene descriptions of sex acts, how and where he would violate her, and announcing that she was his bee and she had better learn to like it. He dragged her upstairs by the neck and raped her orally, vaginally, and anally, even after the woman told him she was 5 months pregnant and begged him to stop, the woman said. Instead, Sowell forced her to say, "Yes, sir, I like it," the police report says. Sowell again went to sleep and the woman left. I'm sorry. When she returned with the police about 8 a.m., he was still sleeping. The police arrested Anthony Sowell, but charges were never filed after police said the woman could not be found to testify. But the police finally had their man in a 1989 grape case, and Sowell was in jail awaiting trial on those charges, court documents say. He eventually pleaded guilty to a lesser charge of attempted rape, the record shows. And on September 12th, 1990, Anthony Sowell was sentenced to 5 to 15 years in prison. 8 days after sentencing, Sowell was taken to the Ohio Department of Rehabilitation and Corrections prison in Lorain. The shy kid from East Cleveland was now 31 and a convict. The fifth step in the 12-step self-help program goes like this. We admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. In prison, Anthony Sowell went to the meetings of at least two 12-step programs, Alcoholic Anonymous and Adult Children of Alcoholics, prison officials said. But the step 5 apparently didn't carry over when it came to Sowell trying to get help behind bars for his sexual obsessions. In 1993, Sowell signed up for sex offender treatment but was turned down, a parole officer noted. The reason? He would not admit he was a sex offender. He might have been in denial, but Sowell was also a model prisoner for his 15 years at 4 different Ohio penitentiaries, officials said. He had no major rule infractions, on his record and only 4 other minor violations. He took courses called Living Without Violence, Cage Your Rage, Positive Personal Change, and Drug Awareness Prevention. He called on his Marine training to work as an electrician, and he honed in on his culinary skills in the prison kitchen, which after his release in 2005 helped him earn a reputation for throwing good barbecues. He used to like to cook a lot, says Tanya Doss, who used to go to Sowell's Imperial Avenue home in 2005. He was a chef. Sowell had to deal with other prisoners' attitudes about attempted rape. Carlton Pope, who said he was sorry, Carlton Pope, who said he has served 30 years in Ohio's prisons, said he met Sowell at Grafton Correctional Institution, where Sowell spent the last 9 years and 3 months of his stretch. I shunned him because not only did he seem demented and a psychotic pervert, he carried the stigma of convicted rapist, Pope said. Despite his good behavior, the violence of Sowell's crime persuaded parole officials to repeatedly deny his request for release. He served his maximum sentence. He was still in prison in 2002 when he learned that his father, Thomas Sowell, had died. Sowell won 2 small victories in prison. Excuse me. One was a high school education. On September 17, 2002, Sowell took a GED examination at Grafton and passed with 2,820 points, easily besting the 2,250 point threshold. The second, according to Doss, was this: Sowell gave up alcohol and any other intoxicants he might have been using. Excuse me. But in retrospect, Sowell's education and reformation efforts in prison did not prepare him to deal with his problems on the outside when on June 20th, 2005, at age 45, he walked out of prison a free man. Out on pri Out of prison in 2005, Anthony Sowell might have gotten it into his head to try to help women who bartered their bodies with men for crack cocaine. He offered them malt liquor, companionship, and shelter from the dangers of the streets on Cleveland's east side, said four women with drug problems who had encounters with Sowell. But if Sowell felt betrayed by those he thought was trying to help, he would terrorize, attack, or grape them, according to police reports made by two women who said Sowell befriended them and then turned on them. The helper theory, a person close to the investigation of the Imperial Avenue Strangler case said, is one motive police have pursued in their interrogation and investigation of Sowell. When he was released from prison, Sowell was apparently clean and sober. A psychological evaluation deemed him unlikely to grape again. Excuse me. He has to register as a sex offender, reporting to the Cuyahoga County Sheriff's Office once a year until a 2008 federal law mandated that he had to check in every 90 days. He rented out a space in the home of his late father's widow, Sojourner Sowell, at 12205 Imperial Avenue in Cleveland, a white 2.5-story double. He completed Networks for Success, a program for ex-convicts offered by the Tower towards oh Lord. He completed Networks for Success, a program for ex-convicts offered by the Towards Employment nonprofit agency. And he started dating women who lived or hung out in poor, crime-ridden Mount Pleasant neighborhood he now called home, according to two of the women's accounts. Tanya Doss, 43, is one of the women who said she was in he was in uh-oh, sorry, y'all, I'm so sorry. Tanya Doss, 43, is one of the women who says she was involved with, and she says eventually attacked by Sowell. Doss says she met Sowell in 2005 when she lived across the street from him. At that time, Doss said Sowell did not use crack cocaine, but she and Tone drank beer, played chess, and barbecued. He told Doss he had been in prison, but that he had taken the rap for a crime committed by someone else. I used to go over there and be like, Tone, what's up? Said Doss. He seemed like a regular human being. He had a little laughter in him. Not everyone thought so. Regina McKay, Reginald McKay, who met Sowell in 2005, described Sowell at the time as not crazy, but strange. Sort of quiet, mousy, sneaky, sort of. It was around this time that Sowell began dating Lori Frazier. Frazier told a Cleveland television news reporter. Frazier made headlines after Sowell's arrest in the Imperial Avenue Strangler case because Cleveland Mayor Frank Jackson is her uncle. She declined to speak for this story. But both the mayor and Frazier, who described herself as a former crack user, have said Sowell and Frazier had a relationship. It lasted from 2005 until 2007 or early 2008, according to Doss and to Frazier's statements on television. He took good care of me, Frazier said. Good care of me. Frazier lived with Sowell in the Imperial Avenue house in what looked like a monogamous relationship, Doss said. Doss said she moved to New York by 2006, but would come back to visit Imperial Avenue. Occasionally, she would knock on Sowell's door. He'd say, I got a woman now, so you can't come and visit me, Doss said. That woman was Frazier, Doss said. I see them walking together and all that. In another sign of outward stability, Sowell got a steady job in March 2006 through Networks for Success as a rubber molder at Custom Rubber Corps on East 55th Street in Cleveland. He was a very good employee, said the company president. But by 2007, Sowell's personal and work lives started to unravel, and women on or near Imperial Avenue began to go missing. Women whose decomposing bodies would later be found in and around Sowell's house. 2007 was a bad year for Anthony Sowell. It's also when the stench of death came to linger on Imperial Avenue. In 2007 or early 2008, Sowell ended a nearly 3-year living relationship with Lori Frazier and others said, but he remained hung up on her for another 2 years to other women who knew Sowell said. In July 2007, after Sowell did not show up for 2 days in a row, Custom Rubber Products fired him, company president Charlie Braun said. Sowell's means of self-support were reduced to collecting and selling scrap metal. About the same time, in May or June 2007, the woman believed to be the first Imperial Avenue strangler victim, Crystal Dozier, went missing, police said. That June also marks the first time an Imperial neighbor called Councilman Zach Reed to complain about the odor of decaying flesh, Reed said. The stink got oh, sorry, the stink got stronger and more women went missing at an ever increasing rate. Sowell was very familiar in the ragtag army of men and women who pushed shopping carts through snow and sun scavenging for scrap copper and less precious metals among the abandoned and torn down homes in a decay in the inner city Cleveland. Scrapper Kim Kemp sells her Saturday haul first thing the next morning at the Ohio Metal Recycling on Grand Avenue, one of the only such businesses in the city open on Sunday. Everybody knew him, said Kemp, who was a scrapper, friend of hers who invited to smoke crack at Sowell's house. He smoked crack. I guess he did what he did to get his side hustle. On Imperial, Sowell was a regular and neighborly fixture, inviting others over for cookouts, chess games, and malt liquor. His libations of choice were 40s of King Cobra, 40-ounce bottles of an Anheuser-Busch brand valued for its relatively high 6% alcohol content, cheap price, and lack of flavor. And among neighborhood women looking to kick it, smoke crack, and drink, Sowell was known to have a party place beyond the reach of his stepmother, landlady, whose disabilities prevented her from climbing the 2 flights of stairs to the third floor. He was cool, supposed to be a cool person, said Doss, a former friend of Sowell's from 2005 who returned to Cleveland in 2007 after living in New York. Like I said, let's go drink a beer. All right, cool. Let's go smoke a joint. Cool. Sowell's experience with drugs in the late 1980s. Sorry. Sowell had experience with drugs in the late 1980s, his East Cleveland police record says. Sowell started smoking crack cocaine not long after his release from prison in 2005, said Alan Sowell, his half brother. By 2007, Doss said Sowell had, a typical look of a chronic crack abuser. And by 2009, Doss said she smoked crack with Sowell in tandem with drinking, a dangerous combination linked by medical studies to aggression. And Sowell himself admitted to an emergency medical crew that he had been smoking crack and drinking all day when an ambulance showed up at his house in October 20th, 2009 incident. At least 2 women voluntarily went to Sowell's in 2009 for what they thought would be good times, but the good times suddenly turned violent, they said. They survived to tell strikingly similar tales in police reports and in one case an extensive interview. Their stories, one from Doss who said in interviews and in a police report that Sowell attacked her on April 21st, and another from a police report about an alleged September 22nd rape involving a 36-year-old former Imperial Avenue resident, offer insight into what might have happened to the women whose bodies were found in Sowell's house. Sowell is accused of using alcohol and or drugs to lure vulnerable acquaintances drug users with criminal past who lived on the fringe, police and prosecutors said. The encounters began unthreateningly. Sorry. The encounters began unthreateningly, but turned violent after the beer and drugs ran out, or a question Sowell didn't like was asked, according to the two women. In Daws's case, she and Sowell, sorry, my goodness. In Daws's case, she said Sowell slapped her, choked her, and forced her to strip naked after he ran out of crack. She curled up on a bed, and Sowell eventually left her alone. In the September 22nd case, the woman told police that Sowell reacted violently after she asked him about another woman who said Sowell had attacked her. Sowell then raped the woman in the September 22nd case while tightening an electric extension cord around her neck until she passed out, a police report says. In both cases, the women said he became calm after the attacks, offering them money, food, or clothing, and watched as they walked out of the door. These traits line up with several facets of the profile of sexually sadistic serial killers used by the FBI and police departments to identify suspects in cases. The instantaneous rage, followed by calm and particularly telling, Lord, let me slow down. The instantaneous rage, followed by calm, is particularly telling, according to criminal behavior profiling experts. The pattern is consistent with a heating up, cooling down cycle of behavior often seen in sexually sadistic killers, said the City University of New York crime historian Harold Chester, author of the Serial Killer Files. Another pattern in the Imperial Avenue case also fits the profile of a typical serial killer, a growing appetite for violence. In all of 2007, only one woman, whose body was later found in Sowell's home, went missing, police said. Then there was a year-long gap. In 2008, dis- four women linked to him disappeared, and another woman claimed he attacked her. The bodies of the four were later found at his home. The fifth woman was bleeding when she approached police and told them Sowell punched her in the head and demanded she take her clothes off on December 8th, 2008. Then in 2009, 8, 6 of the women whose bodies were found at Sowell's house went missing last year. Add to them two others, Doss, who said she was assaulted by Sowell in April, and the woman who reported he raped her on September 22nd. The escalation in the frequency of violent episodes linked to Sowell's Imperial Avenue home, 1 in 2007, 5 in 2008, and 8 in 2009, suggests the strangler had become addicted to the sexual thrills associated with serial killers, said Stephen T. Holmes, a criminologist of Orlando's University of Central Florida and the author of a series of books on serial killers. In other words, the killer had to have more and more violence to satisfy his insatiable lust. What exactly prompted the rage that led to the Imperial Avenue slayings remains a mystery, though it obviously was aimed at women in general and specifically at women who sold their bodies and risked their lives for drugs. Two women who had encounters with Sowell in 2009 said he remained obsessed with Frazier, the former admitted crack user he broke up with in 2007 or early 2008. Frazier did not comment for this story despite repeated requests. Dawes said Sowell showed her, in April 2009, a purple sweatsuit he had bought for Frazier, and the woman in the September 22nd, 2009 incident said Sowell still kept some of Frazier's clothes around 2 years after their relationship ended, the police report says. Sowell's world came crashing down October 29th when police went to his house to arrest a 50-year-old in the September 22nd case. He was gone. What they found was a nightmare scenario of decomposing bodies. Sowell saw the commotion of emergency vehicles at his house on the night of October 29th, and before asking for a ride back to his sister's house on East 131st Street, eluding arrest, he said this to his neighbor, Debbie Madison. That girl made me do it. As the body count rose, police found and arrested Sowell on October 31st, while the city reacted in horror and disbelief, and the world watched in fascination. Little more about Sowell has been forthcoming from police and prosecutors as the city awaits his trial on charges of murder and rape in Cleveland's grisliest serial killer spree since the Torso murders of the 1930s. But questions remain. Why, for instance, didn't police and prosecutors pursue charges against Sowell after a bloody woman claimed Sowell attacked her at his Imperial Avenue home in December 2008? Although several legal experts have said enough evidence existed for a grand jury to indict Sowell, authorities decided the woman wasn't credible and dropped the case. Six more women whose bodies were found at Sowell's Imperial Avenue home disappeared after the cops let Sowell go, and conclusions can be drawn. The evidence suggests, for example, that Sowell, while ultimately responsible for his own actions, was shaped and operated in a deadly subculture that is underpoliced and underserved by the social safety net. It is a world of casual brutality, degradation, where sexual favors and drugs are ready currency. A world that many of us, safe behind the locked doors of our cars and in the relative comfort of our homes, choose not to think about, even though it exists so close to our own little worlds. But if we look, glimpses of it can be seen through the lens of the life of the man born Anthony Edward Sowell.